That is much harder to do than I remember. Statement begins. The situation with Jane Prentiss has obviously escalated, rendering my typical workspace environment uninhabitable. This will be resolved shortly. Eventually. First-time listener, long-time theorist. This is Edwin. Any pronouns you want, I don't care. Since the last episode, I've now completed Season 1 of the Magnus Archives. Today I'll be discussing episodes 19, Confession 1, to episode 40, Human Remains. Spoiler warnings accordingly. This series has also appeared to have gained much more traction than initially anticipated. Thank you for joining me. Although some of your comments I find deeply unsettling. Claiming that the anglerfish has caught another one, or that you're looking forward to what this journey will twist my mind into. A lot of you mention a web. Welcome, the first-time listener. It only seems fair that we begin with some corrections. This will include anything from previous episodes that are outrightly debunked or incorrect. For example, I referred to episode 2's statement maker as Jonathan Gillespie, when his actual name is Joshua Gillespie. Along with that, upon further inspection of episode 11, Dreamer, the statement maker, Antonio Blake, actually broke up with a man named Graham prior to Antonio having his prophetic dreams. This means that they were dating from 2000 to 2006. The date Amy Patel saw the creature attack and impersonate Graham in episode 3 Across the Street was April 7th, 2007. Antonio dated the original Graham, not the supposed replicant. And possibly, of the most embarrassing ones, it is pronounced archivist, not archivist. 18 episodes, and you think I would have clocked that one. Now, while there are not many theories from the prior episode that I now deem entirely incorrect, there is a glaring one that I must address. No, Martin is not a vampire. He's simply a good researcher with a corkscrew and claustrophobia. I really like Martin. I really like all the team we've met. I find the workers at the Magnus Institute to be very charming and very refreshing to hear in contrast to Jonathan's somber, serious demeanour. At the moment, I've officially met Elias Bouchard, as well as Sasha James, Timothy Stoker, and Martin Blackwood. I was most surprised by Tim. I expected him to be very similar to Jonathan on the fact that Jonathan praises Tim's skills most frequently. Come to my surprise to have him be a goofy lad. I hope we hear from him more in the future. Elias draws up the most questions for me. He appears to know Jonathan quite well. How long have they worked together? How long has Jonathan been working at the Institute? Elias even knew that Jonathan used to smoke, even when John told Tim that he doesn't. We know Elias was once a filing clerk, and that he was the only one working here when Gertrude Robinson was head. Gertrude. Then Sasha. I find her well-to-do attentiveness and curiosity very alluring. I like how she makes John question himself, because she's perceptive enough to know what will eat away at his skepticism. I really like Sasha. Liked Sasha. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My favourite episodes this round were episode 34, Anatomy Class, and episode 39, Infestation. My least favourite episode was episode 21, Freefall, and I found episode 30, Killing Floor, to be the first time in the show that I truly got squeamish. There's something about the repercussions of humans being overly exposed to committing violence. And my favourite scene from the entire show right now is in episode 39, Infestation, where Jonathan and Martin have their, as they say it, heart to heart. It was sweet. And, as an archivist, I would like to mention that the transcripts on Rusty Quill's website are occasionally incorrect. Has anybody else noticed this? Episode 9, A Father's Love, excludes the paragraph describing Robert Montauk's death, and episode 40, Human Remains, excludes Jonathan Sims' final statement, the one where he said, I'm too tired for this.
I'm going to figure this out. And I'm not going to stop. They'll have to kill me first.
I doubt these are going to be fixed, seeing as they're 8 years old by now. But it would make my job a lot easier. Any suggestions for other transcripts would be greatly appreciated. And I've added yet another spreadsheet to the mix, altered by statement date. I want to see Gertrude's perspective. See if that helps put things together. This round of episodes was enlightening, yet concerning. I found many different parts connecting to each other, but I can't work out the how or the why of it all. I just keep getting caught in loops, and I'm finding it very hard to get out of. Much less finding a way to describe it without sounding incoherent or mad. The motifs are particularly frustrating. They serve as the faintest of threads in between events, but most of them bring more questions than answers. I sometimes wonder if I'm looking too closely, grasping at straws. But alas, this is what I've gathered. Current motifs include apples, dolls, fractals, jaundice/yellow skin rash, meat, ozone/formaldehyde smells, Breakin' and Hope deliveries, strange music and songs, misshapen bones, parts and bodies, then characters who are chain smokers. A lot of these things intersect and intertwine with each other, and some of them have one-off parts that I don't understand yet. But I will. Until then, let's talk about Jane Prentiss. The interesting thing is, the event in which Prentiss spread her infestation to Harriet Lee happened prior to Prentiss giving her statement to the Magnus Institute. Harriet met the dishevelled Prentiss passed out on the side of a road in Archway on November 13th, 2013, as mentioned in episode 6, Squirm. However, Prentiss gave her statement to the Institute in episode 32, Hive, on February 23rd, 2014. Prentiss's statement itself, it's certainly disturbing. She describes a hive, of which I assume her human mind perceives as a wasp's nest, but she said it was a feeling that was everywhere. She talked about strange music at the hive.
You must understand, it sings so sweetly, and I need it. But I am afraid.
She described it as a song of flesh. Prior to the hive, Prentiss was a witch. She practiced Wiccan and pagan rituals at the Thames every weekend. She worked at Good Energy Spiritual Shop in Archway before having as Jon described it, a breakdown over an ant infestation that led to her getting fired. This leads me to my first big breakthrough. I think I found the identity of Antonio Blake. Blake was the statement maker in episode 11, Dreamer, in which he had prophetic dreams of people's death, including that of Gertrude Robinson. He used a fake name and gave his statement 2 months before Gertrude Robinson died. During Prentiss's time at Good Energy Spiritual Shop, she described a man named Oliver, who she met prior to finding her nest. She claimed that
His name was Oliver, and he would look at me so strangely, not with lust or affection or contempt, but with sadness. Such a deep sadness. And once with fear. It didn't matter, because no one in the shop wanted to hear about the ants below it. I tried to tell them to explain, but they did not care. The pretty young things complained, and I left.
Sorry. I'm finding her statement harder to snap out of. In Blake's statement, he said that he found a job working at a crystal shop. We know his name isn't Antonio Blake. I think his name is Oliver. In Prentiss's attack, in the season 1 finale, episodes 39 and 40, Infestations and Human Remains, it was discovered that there were tunnels hidden within the Magnus Institute. Martin believes them to be from the old Millbank prison. They similarly reflect tunnels from episode 35, Old Passages. of which those ones were built by Robert Smirk. They also had a connection to Jürgen Leitner. I'll get to him. Prentiss's worms reacted differently when in these tunnels. Their activity was quieter and faster. Tim had some good words about it.
They've been down there for months, breeding, building up their numbers until there were enough to properly bury us. Except you found that hidden passage, and they had to act. I found a room. They were sort of wrapping around each other, like they were trying to form a thing, like a structure or something. A ring. I was probably still out of my skull and half hallucinated the whole thing, but it looked like they were trying to make a doorway.
Doorway?
A doorway to where? Or what? And what file was Jane looking for? Could it be one of the ones with good... Ah, yes. The next part, I suppose. Gertrude Robinson is dead. She was shot 3 times in the chest with her mouth hanging open. Martin found her body in a small square room within the tunnels, surrounded by old cassette tapes. I have my theories. I'll get to them later. Sasha is also dead, as far as I know. Something else is impersonating her. This something has retained her memories, but her voice is different. Is she controlled by the hive now? How did Elias notice her so quickly? This impersonation of Sasha has also stolen 3 tapes. The tapes of episode 38, Lost and Found, episode 26, Distortion, and episode 24, Strange Music. I've decided that I will be solving this case diegetically. That means that any information that is no longer accessible to Jonathan Sims, I am not allowing myself to have access to. In this situation, the written statements of episodes 24 and 38 are still accessible. However, episode 26, Distortion, was a live statement made by Sasha James and does not have a written component. I will no longer be listening to the episode. I will be going solely off of my notes made in the spreadsheet. So, about Michael. A creature that wanted to be friends and brought Sasha to the infected body of episode 6's Timothy Hodge in Hanwell Cemetery as a means of saving the lives of Tim, Martin, and Jonathan. He had a long, distorted body in reflections, and when looking at him, he had long blonde hair. It was because of this interaction that Sasha discovered the worm's weakness of carbon dioxide, even though Michael was not an active participant in her rescuing herself. He is antagonistic towards the hive and describes himself as...
How would a melody describe itself when asked?
I don't think he's human, by any typical sense of the word, and I'm not sure he's ever been human. He was described as having leathery skin that was too heavy for a hand, like something too big was stuffed into something too small. And, yes, I've been warned of the many, many Michaels I will encounter, and there are already 5 different Michaels he could be. The less likely cases being Michael McCauley, a friend of the statement maker in episode 1, The Anglerfish, Michael Parfit, the brother of the deceased garbage man in episode 5, Thrown Away, and Michael Getty, the man that hit Naomi Hearn with his car in episode 13, Alone. The 2 most notable Michaels are Michael Key, father of Mary Key, the owner of Pinhole Books with an association to Jürgen Leitner, and Michael Crew in episode 4, Page Turner. He was a friend who was struck by lightning when he was young. Michael Crew's name also popped up in episode 17, Bone Turner's Tale, as the previous owner of the titular book, and possibly the one who put it in the Chiswick Library. This, once again, connects back to Jürgen Leitner. The missing tape of episode 38, Lost and Found, was likely stolen because it contained the death of Sasha James. Although, the statement itself was very interesting, having a spindly creature stuck inside an ancient pot covered in geometric fractals. The loss of episode 24 is the one that deeply confused me. I didn't think anything of it at first listen, much less did I think it would be so important to involve its theft. But Rickon and Hope Deliveries did remove the calliope from the Denikin house, and there were 23 dolls in the attic, all but one without jaws, and statement maker Leanne Denikin eventually found a replica doll of her ex-boyfriend Joshua Dreary prior to his violent death with his jaw torn clean off. And episode 5, Thrown Away, depicts 93 Lancaster Road in Walthamstow, London, as the dollhouse, which statement maker Kieran Woodward found a trash bag full of dolls. And Lancaster Road is the immediate adjacent one to Clarence Road, of which Tom Han lived, the man in episode 30, Killing Floor, who told statement maker David Laylow, "You can stop the slaughter by closing the door," before shooting bolts into himself and handing Laylow the bolt gun to kill him. No. I don't know how an endless slaughterhouse in Dalston relates to an ancient circus organ in Liverpool. I've absolutely no idea. But what I do know is, all of the statements hold a lot of strange music. The Calliope, Jane Prentiss, Joshua Gillespie's coffin, the piper, the wolf man, Natalie Ennis singing throughout the night. The church. Let's talk about the church. Episode 25, Growing Dark. Natalie Ennis was a member of the People's Church of the Divine Host, who was reported missing after trying to convert her roommate, Catherine Harper, in March of 2015. Natalie first gained interest in the church after her mother died in October 2014. Statement maker Mark Billam reported she took down Bible verses from her apartment, that she had lost faith. After she joined this new church, she didn't put the verses back up. It reminds me of Father Edwin Burroughs in episode 19 and 20. Whatever possessed him wanted his faith. I think it's abundantly obvious that he was brought into the church as well. Natalie's description of the church unnerved me.
That she had a new home to be going to, a new family. She said that they were all going. That 300 years was a long time to wait, but she was lucky to have found it so close to the end. She said that it wasn't long until they were collected by Mr. Pitch.
Who is Mr. Pitch? The current known location of the People's Church of the Divine Host is Hither Green Dissenters Chapel in Lewisham, London. Natalie left for church at night and would arrive around sunrise, placing worship around 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. depending on her commute. Mark Billam went there and experienced tactile changes when in complete darkness. The floor felt like smooth marble, then to rusty metal grates with leathery fingers grabbing at him. They sang at him, in a dissonant cacophony only combining at the word Ny-Alesund. Ny-Alesund is the northernmost human civilization in Norway. Almost always cold. Always dark. It is a company town operated by Outer Bay. But I wonder if it does business with a boat named the Tundra, owned by the Lucas family's Solis Shipping PLC. I think this confirms the connection of the People's Church of the Divine Host with Jürgen Leitner. From episode 35, Old Passages, we know he's specifically from Norway. But I'll do you one better. Episode 37, Burnt Offering, depicts Jason North discovering a clearing in Lochglass, Scotland, in 2009. It affected his senses, killed nearby animals, and was made of massive trees collected in such a perfect circle that they had to have been planted 50 years ago. On each tree held a bottle full of natural materials, then a photograph and the burnt hair of Gertrude Robinson. The only people seen around the area were some middle-aged businessmen, which is exactly how they describe Jürgen Leitner. Gertrude Robinson died 6 years after this on May 15, 2015. The same night, police were sent to Hither Green Dissenters Chapel after 11 p.m. upon hearing screams, but found nothing. I think Jürgen Leitner and the People's Church of the Divine Host were involved in Gertrude Robinson's murder, and I think Elias Bouchard pulled the trigger. I do not trust him, and I do not trust the patronage of the Lucas family, and I do not think Jonathan Sims is safe in the archive anymore, but I don't think he would stop looking. And I can't blame him, because I wouldn't stop either. I wish there was more certainty that I could give you. I've got traces of these things, but they're so vague yet expansive that there's so much I can't work out. I think fire might act as some sort of purifier. Many stories end in burning. Not to mention that spiderweb Zippo left to John from Brinkin and Hope deliveries. I've also wondered about the hypnotic table they left, first mentioned in episode 3, across the street. It had a matching box found under a cursed tree in episode 8 burned out at 105 Hilltop Road. Statement maker Ivo Lensick found it and destroyed it after watching the apple inside of it decay in front of him. One of the only other apples was the tooth apple from the anatomy class. The only other notable table is the Pharaoh table created during cheating death. No description of it being hypnotic, though. I've currently categorized 2 separate supernatural entities within these stories. Firstly, I call them the cheaters of death, and secondly are the replicant horrors. Unfortunately, there are numerous people who slide in between these categories. Episode 29, Cheating Death, paints it the most clearly. Nathaniel Thorpe was a soldier in the Revolutionary War who cheated at a game of Pharaoh with a skeletal figure, causing him to trade places with the figure himself. For 200 years it was a blur of taking lives through playing games until he was defeated and swapped places again. It is now 1974, and he cannot age or die. He cannot eat or sleep, and he is stuck with the deepest sense of craving with nothing that can satiate it. This might explain something about the meat. Skeletal figures trying to look human by stapling skin to themselves. Like Sarah Baldwin in episode 28, Skin Tight. Because the interesting thing about her is that she was one of the victims of the anglerfish in 2006 in the very first episode. But now she's constantly chain-smoking, not eating, and talking to a mysterious floating figure deep into the night. Is she serving death? Not that I think it's death. I don't believe that for a minute. I bet it's somehow Jürgen Leitner before I actually believe it to be death. Could be Mr. Pitch, whoever that is. Graham smoked heavily too, prior to his overtaking of that creature, which is my next point. The replicant horrors. I'm including the anglerfish in this one, as well as the creature that overtook Graham Folger, and the creature that chased Julia Montauk in episode 9 of Father's Love, and the creature stuck in the Ming Dynasty pot while in the possession of Andre Romeo in episode 38 Lost and Found. I'm not including Sasha James and Michael, because I think the Hive is something different. And Michael I just don't understand. I have attempted to create a timeline for these creatures, if it's even more than one creature, but I am at a loss. It doesn't make sense. They're just different enough from each other that I can't be sure. Not to mention, Hither Green Dissenters is one of many chapels, graveyards, and mausoleums that are rattling across our scene. The amount of times I've been on Google Maps. God, if I hadn't lived in London for half a year, I'd have absolutely no idea how long this would have taken. I wish I had more answers to conclude here. My only certainty is the coordinated assassination of Gertrude Robinson. Why does the People's Church want our faith? And why would they choose both willing and unwilling participants? And what does Jürgen Leitner have to do with it? Which tapes was Gertrude Robinson hiding? And what statement did Jane Prentiss want? I've been wondering if maybe Prentiss and Robinson were looking for the same thing. I can't be sure, but I just can't shake the feeling that Prentiss is not dead, or that she's been misunderstood. Not the Hive, but her, or the combination of the two. I mean, I don't know what I'm thinking, but I don't believe that she's gone. I doubt John would believe either. I mean, the impersonation of Saucer James certainly isn't acting the same way Jane Prentiss was. I feel like she'd be part of this hive, but maybe she is one of the replicant horrors. I wish I had a more academic reasoning for the hunch with Jane Prentiss, but it'll simply remain prophetic, I guess. Or useless. Only time will tell. Sometimes I even wonder if Jon knew Jane. Did you hear that? No. Damn it. I've got to go. I've got to... okay. Statement ends.
Statements!